Book 1, Chapter 6 of the Lancashire Witches. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Reading by Andy Minter. The Lancashire Witches, a Romance of Pendle Forest, by William Harrison Ainsworth. Book 1, Alison Device. Chapter 6. The Ordeal by Swimming. Bound hand and foot in the painful posture before described, roughly and insolently handled on all sides, in peril of her life from the frightful ordeal to which she was about to be subjected, the miserable captive was borne along on the shoulders of Jem Device and Sparshot, her long fine chestnut hair trailing upon the ground, her white shoulders exposed to the insolent gaze of the crowd, and her trim holiday attire torn to rags by the rough treatment she had experienced. Nance Redferne, it has been said, was a very comely young woman, but neither her beauty, her youth, nor her sex had any effect upon the ferocious crowd, who were too much accustomed to such brutal and debasing exhibitions to feel anything but savage delight in the spectacle of a fellow creature so scandalously treated and tormented, and the only excuse to be offered for their barbarity is the firm belief they entertained that they were dealing with a witch. And when, even in our own day, so many revolting scenes are enacted to gratify the brutal passions of the mob, while prize fights are tolerated, and wretched animals goaded on to tear each other in pieces, it is not to be wondered at that in times of less enlightenment and refinement greater cruelties should be practised. Indeed, it may be well to consider how far we have really advanced in civilisation since then, for until cruelty, whether to man or beast, be wholly banished from our sports, we cannot justly reproach our ancestors, nor congratulate ourselves on our improvement. Nance's cries of distress were only answered by jeers and renewed insults, and, wearied out at length, the poor creature ceased struggling and shrieking, the dogged resolution she had before exhibited again coming to her aid. But her fortitude was to be yet more severely tested, revealed by the disorder of her habiliments, and contrasting strongly with the extreme whiteness of her skin, a dun-coloured mole was discovered upon her breast. It was pointed out to Potts by Jem Device, who declared it to be a witch mark, and the spot from where her familiar drained her blood. "This is one of the good helps to the discovery of a witch, pointed out by our sovereign lord the king," said the attorney, narrowly examining the spot. "The one, saith our wise prince, is the finding of their mark, and the trying of the insensibleness thereof. The other is their fleeting on the water. The water ordeal will come presently, but the insensibility of the mark might at once be attested." "Yeigh, that con soon be tried," cried Jem, with a savage laugh, and taking a pin from his sleeve, the ruffian plunged it deeply into the poor creature's flesh. Nance winced, but she set her teeth hardly, and repressed the cry that must otherwise have been wrung from her. "A clear witch," cried Jem, drawing forth the pin. "Not a drop o' blood flows, an hoo feels nowt." "Feel nowt!" rejoined Nance, between her ground teeth. "May have a pang as sharp in your cancered heart, you villain." After this barbarous test, the crowd, confirmed by it in their notions of Nan's guiltiness, hurried on, their numbers increasing as they proceeded along the main street of the village, leading towards the river. All the villagers left at home, rushing forth on hearing a witch was about to be swum, and when they came within a bowshot of the stream, Sparshot called to Baggiley to lay hold of Nance, while he himself, accompanied by several of the crowd, ran over the bridge, the part he had to enact requiring him to be on the other side of the water. Meantime, the main party turned down a little footpath, protected by a gate on the left, which led between garden hedges to the grassy banks of the Calder, and in taking this course they passed by the cottage of Elizabeth Device. Hearing the shouts of the rabble, little Jennet, who had been in no very happy frame of mind since she had been brought home, came forth, and seeing her brother, called out to him in her usual sharp tones. "What's the matter, Jem? What'n you gotten there?" "A witch," replied Jem, gruffly. "Nance Redferne, Mother Chattox's grand daughter. Come and see her swum i' the Calder." Jennet readily complied, for her curiosity was aroused, and she shared in the family feelings of dislike to Mother Chattox and her descendants. "Is this Nance Redferne?" she cried, keeping close to her brother. "I'm right glad yo'n caught her at last. How dun yo find yourself, Nance?" "Ill at ease, Jennet," replied Nance, with a bitter look; "boh it ill becomes you to jeer me, lass, seeing as yo're a born witch yoursel." "Aha!" cried Potts, looking at the little girl. "So this is a born witch, eh, Nance?" "A born and bred witch," rejoined Nance, "just as her brother Jem here is a wizard. We're the grandchilder of Mother Demdike of Pendle, the greatest witch i' these parts, and childer of her best device, who's nah much better. Ask me to witness agen 'em, that's aw." "Howd thy tongue, woman, or ey'll drown thee," muttered Jem, in a tone of deep menace. "Ye canna mon if ey'm the witch ye ca' me," rejoined Nance. "Jennet's turn 'll come, os weel os mine, one o' these days. Mark my words." "Efore that ey shan see ye burned, ye faggot," cried Jennet, almost fiercely. "Yo'n get the fiend's mark o' your sleeve," cried Nance. "Ey see it written i' letters o' blood." "That's where our cat scratted me," replied Jennet, hiding her arm quickly. "Good very good," observed Potts, rubbing his hands. "Who but witches can be proof against witches, saith our sagacious sovereign. I shall make something of this girl. She seems a remarkably quick child remarkably quick ha!" By this time the party, having gained the broad flat mead through which the Calder flowed, took their way quickly towards its banks, the spot selected for the ordeal lying about 50 yards above the weir, where the current, ordinarily rapid, was checked by the dam, offering a smooth surface, and with considerable depth of water. If soft natural beauties could have subdued the hearts of those engaged in this cruel and wicked experiment, never was scene better calculated for the purpose than that under contemplation. Through a lovely green valley meandered the Calder, now winding round some verdant knoll, now washing the base of lofty heights feathered with timber to their very summits, now lost amid thick woods, and only discernible at intervals by a glimmer amongst the trees. Immediately in front of the assemblage rose Whalley Nab, its steep sides and brow partly covered with timber, with green patches in the uplands where sheep and cattle fed. Just below the spot where the crowd were collected, the stream, here of some width, passed over the weir, and swept in a foaming cascade over the huge stones supporting the dam, giving the rushing current the semblance and almost the beauty of a natural waterfall. Below this the stream ran brawling on in a wider but shallower channel, making pleasant music as it went, and leaving many dry beds of sand and gravel in the midst, while 100 yards lower down it was crossed by the arches of the bridge. Further still, a row of tall cypresses lined the bank of the river, and screened that part of the abbey converted into a residence by the Asshetons. And after this came the ruins of the refectory, the cloisters, the dormitory, the conventual church, and other parts of the venerable structure, overshadowed by noble lime trees and elms. Lovelier or more peaceful scene could not be imagined. The green meads, the bright clear stream, with its white foaming weir, the woody heights reflected in the glassy waters, the picturesque old bridge, and the dark grey ruins beyond it, might have engaged the attention and melted the heart. Then the hour when evening was coming on, and when each beautiful object, deriving new beauty from the medium through which it was viewed, exercised a softening influence, and awakened kindly emotions. To most the scene was familiar, and therefore it could have no charm of novelty. To Potts, however, it was altogether new, but he was susceptible of few gentle impressions, and neither the tender beauty of the evening, nor the wooing loveliness of the spot, awakened any responsive emotion in his breast. He was dead to everything except the ruthless experiment about to be made. Almost at the same time that Jem Device and his party reached the near bank of the stream, the beadle and the others appeared on the opposite side. Little was said, but instant preparations were made for the ordeal. 2 long coils of rope having been brought by Baggiley, one of them was made fast to the right arm of the victim, and the other to the left,